Hello YouTube. Here I'm going to show you quick, easy few steps to kit out your interior of your car and make it looking like this. Alright, so the first step is to just get the whatever you're painting off the car. So as you can see, this piece of dash, it's got a bit of flaky paint here, and that's the main reason I want to. Can you see that? That's the main reason that we're doing this job, is because this paint has been bodged up with some chemicals by the person that cleaned this car. So I'll show you how. Just first step, get the interior pieces off, and it's very easy. All you got to do is find somewhere to grab it and just give it a yank, basically. Just give it a little short, sharp yanks, and just like that, it'll pop right out. Now in this case, I've taken the aircon thingy out with it, but that's very easy just to unhook and put it back in place, and we've got our thing free, our piece that we want to paint. Now with this, I've got a bit of a problem, because this bit, this dark grey bit is the bit I want to paint. However, I quite like this silver bit, and I want to keep it silver. Now some people might like to put masking tape over that so that you don't get any spray on it. I'm going to do this a bit differently. If we turn it over, we see there's little plastic rivets. If you zoom in here, you see there's little sort of plastic rivets, and the next step is just going to be to just drill them out so that we can separate this chrome silvery bit from this, and then we can, it'll be much easier to paint it. Alright, so the next step is to try and remove those rivets so that we can get the two pieces apart. I'm just using a pair of side cutters. It comes out really easily. I just get the side cutters on the rivets, and it takes a little bit of going to sort of, it's a little bit dodgy, but there you go. Does the job. We get there. And this is on the rear side, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit hashed. That's all right, because no one's going to see it at the end of the day. Now I was tempted to drill this, but the neighbours, it's a Sunday morning and I don't want to be noisy and wake the neighbours with a drill, so side cutters will do fine. And just like that, these ones I've done earlier. Oh, I haven't done that one, need to do that one. But yeah, we'll fast forward until they're all done. Alright, so finally managed to get that chrome bit off the top of that piece of dash. So now we get about the process of preparing it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hit it with the sandpaper. This is P180 grit, so that means it's fairly fine. I definitely wouldn't go any rougher than this, so P180 or ideally 300 or something like that, but this is what I've got to hand. P180, that will do. So I'm just going to begin by giving the piece just a sand, a nice circular motion. That's what you want. And you just want to cover the whole panel and just sand it all down. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when we come to paint it, the paint won't stick to the panel unless it has a sort of porous surface to stick to. If I just sprayed paint directly onto this gloss clear coat, then the paint isn't going to stick at all. It will stick, but it won't be a nice finish, and it will flake off. It will be a disaster. So trust me, this is what you need to do. Just get some sandpaper, not too coarse, because otherwise you could score and damage the panel that you're working on. So, and actually don't press too hard, because you could end up scoring it. Just slightly scratch the surface, just a nice circular motions all over the panel. Alright fellas, so I've just hit it with that sandpaper and I've covered pretty much everywhere. So now what we're looking for is when you look at it, it's not reflecting too much light. You want it to be sort of a matte finish, and when you run your finger over it, you want it to feel sort of smooth. And you see those square lines? That's nothing. Just ignore that. However, if we look over here, what do we see? We see these bits on the insides here. I haven't been able to reach them with the sandpaper because it's quite a bit of a funny angle to get in there. And so I'm going to show you what to do next to reach those bits. We want to grab this stuff. You can get it at Halfords. It's a bit like wire wool, essentially. A bit like a scour pad. And what you want to do is you just want to, pretty much the same thing. Might just need to take a bit more time. But eventually you will achieve the same finish and just mat it up. And if we take a look already, we're making progress. So I'm going to fast forward until I've completely sanded all the tight little areas, including the edges, all the sort of corners and hard to reach edges. It's really important to be diligent in this process. Don't be lazy, take the time, do it properly, and when you're doing the finish, you'll thank yourself that you took the time in the preparation. Another thing that I should have mentioned is that it's very important that you do this outside, because as you can see, this is kicking up a lot of dust that you don't want inside your house. Alrighty, so here we see all the panels have all been sanded down, so you can't see any gloss on that, so all a matte finish. So what we're going to do next is we're going to prime them so that they're ready for painting. You can't just stick your paint straight on there, because even though we've done the sanding, it still isn't enough to make it have a proper bond. What we need to use first is this. Halfords is what I'm using, but you can use any brand you like. Just make sure it's got the word primer written on it. Primer, that's what we want. So if you give it a good shake up, and we're going to do a couple layers of primer on all the body panels, making sure that we've covered all the areas. But first you have to make sure that you shake this for about 2 minutes or so, just to make sure the paint's all solidly mixed around. But before we put the paint on, there is still dust, quite a lot of dust actually, all over the panels. So what we want to do is get a microfiber towel or any sort of rag, just make sure it's damp, and you just want to wipe the surface, and this will remove any dust. Now ideally use white spirits to soak the cloth, because that will lift the dust off, but I'm showing you that it can be done on a budget without white spirits. You just need just water, just wipe the dust off. And being careful, once you've wiped it off, try not to get any more dust on it, because when you're painting these. Alright, so I'm still shaking up that can of primer, getting it ready. I've wiped all the panels dust free, and as you can see, the moisture has evaporated off. Didn't take long, it's so hot out here. So yeah, as soon as I'm ready to go with this can, I'll start putting the paint on, and I'll show you the best technique for it. Okay, so here we are, here's the spray can. Now, I've used this can before, and as you can see, some of that paint is clogged up in the, there you go, you can see it now. It's clogged up that, the bit where it comes out. And if I put that straight on, then it's going to come out in blobs and it's going to look awful. So what I need to do first is to try and get rid of all that rubbish. There we go. And just have a couple sprays. Just to get rid of that, just to clear the nozzle. There we go. That's a proper way of saying it. So now what I want to do is when I'm painting these, I want to start spraying on the left side. And I want to start spraying on one side, spray over it, and only release the nozzle when you've passed it. The problem with starting spraying directly on is that sometimes it shoots out in gobs right at the beginning, and so you don't want to get that all over this. So you want to start on one side and end on the other, just like this. Very, very light passes to begin with, and I'll show you just how light. As you can see, I'm only just covering it. It's not completely covered. You can still see bits through there. That's fine, because I want this first pass to be very light, and then I'll go through it again a bit heavier. But for this first pass, just want it to be nice and light. And with this, less is more really. If you take it nice and slow, then you're going to be all right. If you try and rush it and do it all in one go, that's when you're going to have a problem. And when you're doing it, you just want to hold the can about 10-15 centimeters away to get the perfect finish. Try and keep it at that consistent distance throughout the spray, otherwise it's going to look all patchy and horrible. Okay, that's the main panel done. Just need to do these bits, and also keep in mind when you're doing this, you want to reach all the sides. If you come at it from just one angle, then you're going to miss certain other spots. Like if I take you around here, you see these bits round there, I've missed that because of the angle that I've sprayed. So make sure you mix up the angles from which you're spraying, and to make sure that you completely cover all sides. On the other side. Keep it shaken up. Make sure it's well stirred. Right, well, for a first pass, that's not bad. You can see I haven't covered everywhere. In fact, if you look closely here, it's very patchy, but that's fine because I didn't intend to cover the whole lot in one go, because then I'd run the risk of just covering it in paint and the paint might run, and once it started, the paint's running, oh, you're really screwed then. So just very light, gentle passes and you'll be fine. Alrighty, so that first coat of primer, I left it for an hour and I hit it with another coat. This time I was a bit more thorough. I went a bit slower while spraying, and we've managed to get full coverage of all the panels. So now when we come to apply the colour that we want, it will stick very well to these panels because they've had this primer, and the primer will help the actual paint to stick better. If you just put the real paint straight on the panels with no primer, then it's more likely to run off and not stick properly to the surface. So now I'm going to let that dry fully for 24 hours and then we'll go on to the next step. Hello guys, right, so as you can see, this panel, the primer's all dried out nicely now. It's been 24 hours now, so this is day 2, and we want to begin the next stage, which is what we call the wet sand. So what we need for this is some wet sandpaper. Now this stuff is 1200 grit, so it's really fine, and you can tell because it's this sort of dark grey material. This is the stuff you want, around at least 1000 grit, I'd say. So what you want to do is you just want to put it in your water bowl, a bowl of water handy. And this job can be quite messy, so do it outside. I've got this this dust sheet over on my garden table, so you just want to get the water on it so it's nice and soaked together, and just lightly sand the thing, because the primer's left a little bit of a rough finish, so you want to just get that nice and smooth out. So just use the water and just very gently sand over. If you do find that it becomes a bit hard to sand, all you need to do is get a bit more water, because it's a sign that the paper is beginning to dry out, and you don't want it, especially now it's really hot outside, the water is going to dry off. Look, it's drying off already. So you just keep it wet all the time, keep sanding, and just sand the whole thing until it's smooth. You don't want to sand through the primer per se, but it doesn't matter if a little bit is sanded off in the corners, as you might see, but just make sure that it's smooth all over, because at the moment it feels a bit rough, and it will leave a bit of a rough finish when you come to put the actual paint on. So let's fast forward until this is all done. Alrighty guys, so that's this panel all sanded. If you're wondering if you're done or not, just run your fingers over and you should feel it's all nice and smooth to the touch. You probably won't be able to see if it's rough, maybe if you really get down and level, but my advice is just to run your finger over it, and if any bits feel rough, just get the sandpaper out, just give it a little bit more, and then feel it again, see if it's good enough. But now I feel like I'm happy with this. It was all smooth over, so I'm just going to let this piece dry and carry on with my other pieces, and I'll catch you guys after this is done. So I've just finished the wet sand, and as you can see, all nice and smooth. However, Now I've got all these funny marks all over the panel, and you can tell that's where I've sort of sanded the paint, but it's still left some of the residue on the surface and it's sort of dried out and caked on. So all you need to do for this, grab a sponge, put it in the water and just go around and give it a good sponging. And you can press hard, press as hard as you need to get all that residue off. And you should find that the sponge is collecting up the paint. So just rinse it off, squeeze and carry on. And you should find that after you've done this and all the water's dried, that you won't have all those funny markings all over your panel, because you've got all the paint residue off and you're left with just a smooth primer on top. So yeah, let's do that. Alrighty guys, right, so that's all wet sanded. I brushed all the particles off with the sponge. Now I've got this paint made by a company called Montana. This is the metallic effect and it is Caribbean colour. I personally really love this brand. They do awesome paint. This is just my preference. So again, the technique is very similar to what you're doing with the primer. Start off with very light coats before gradually building up the layers. You can see in this panel that I've already done, it's a bit patchy, but that's fine. I missed a few spots, that's all right, because we're going to go over it more properly the second coat. So I'm just going to show you again the demonstration for these other bits. Alright, for the first coat that looks pretty good, and I'm happy with that. The main thing is not to do a heavy coat at all. The worst thing that you can do is paint it on too heavy, and the paint can occasionally run, and once it starts running then you've got to sand it down and redo it, which is a massive pain and a waste of time. So yeah, just take it slow, do very light coats to begin with, and yeah, see you in the next clip. I'm going to take you on to the next step, the final step. It's the varnishing. I'm using this stuff. So it's the same company, Montana, and they do this lovely gloss varnish spray. Gives it UV protection, and this stuff is really the finishing touch on your piece. It's very important to spray it with varnish because it gives it a tough exterior, and it will be able to repel water more easily. It will be able to repel dirt and all kinds of. It will protect the surface, basically, stop it getting scratched so easily, and just give it a nice, lovely, glossy finish. As if it isn't glossy enough, it's gonna really. This stuff's really gonna make it pop and stand out. So I'm just gonna hold the can about 15 centimeters away, and again just do light passes, starting on one side, and only stop spraying when you're not holding the can over the panel. if you hold it, if you release the nozzle while it's over the panel, then you're going to get a nasty finish, because when you release it, it shoots out little gobs of varnish that don't look good. So you want to release the nozzle when it's away from the panel. Very simply, there we go. And just give it a couple of minutes to sort of harden, and then have a look around, see if there's any spots you missed, come back from a different angle and give it another coat.